Morning, folks. Are we alive yet? Are we awake yet? Emotionally screwed up and sleep deprived? Because I sure as hell am. 3:29 in the morning, West Coast time. It's the 5th of September, 2024. One screwed over Weaver Genesee of Roseman, California. Okay, so how you guys doing this morning? Besides my own back's killing me. Not normal. So I'm trying to get past all these independent things that are popping up left and right here. There's stories coming out about a week or less about the Venezuelan gangs out in Colorado and then coming up in different cities and terrorizing people left and right. And so naturally, everybody else is going and losing their minds as normal. I kept thinking to myself, no, this doesn't make sense. Venezuelan gangs coming through to terrorize apartments doesn't work. And yes, there was videos coming out. I don't know how the hell they got the video in the first place. It was one particular apartment of lunatics coming through with guns. As soon as people saw the automatic weapons, they're having the conniption fits and posting the shit on the internet. And cops can't verify what's going on in Colorado. They can't. They don't have the solid evidence necessary to back up the claims. The problem is when we have internet, it's becoming more and more of a landscape that we can't define, not even after the damn thing's been built and still being screwed over left and right because of false images. What do we consider false images? Well, we can't verify. Oh, shit, the bugs are up there again. We haven't seen anything falling down from the sky. It's from the damn roaches. I'm supposed to have spraying, but it's not working very well. I need to get bug spraying in this place. But regarding the news stories out there, whether or not they're legitimate, that's the problem. We can't verify half the stuff anyway. Is it legitimate? Is it not legitimate? Is it verified if it's not verified? Well, we have Venezuelan gangs coming through. Okay, well, they're verified as a legitimate gang coming through the borders, maybe. Somehow. I don't know if they did or not. And I'm not going to I'm not going to blame the politics on anything and everybody at this point over here. If they're here, they're here, okay? They don't speak the language, so we got issues. But how did they find an address out in Colorado to invade an apartment? And this apartment complex is having a connection pin saying, but we don't know who they are, but they're not violent one of the gangs because we don't know what's going on. And now you got the press from all over regions coming over here trying to verify information, and they can't verify the information. And then there was a story circulating online somebody made up just to stir people up. The Red and Whites, the Hells Angels. These guys have been for decades, longer than I've been born, been trying to circulate their own little empire all around the world. They got chapters all over the place, and including in every state. Some of these guys try to be local community heroes of showing how much they do care to a point about their neighborhoods by doing charity runs to help out causes they think it's worthy. Cool, got no problems with it. They had problems with the law, maybe the one percenters in there, but I know they've got their own little issues with law enforcement. Okay, I got that one too. I'm not going to hold it against the guys. But what I do hold it against is if I'm going to hear about the HAs coming from out of state to deal with the Venezuelan gangs in Colorado, you don't think that their own chapter would have been able to do something about it or have been telling the cops about it or giving them information? They don't even like to deal with the cops on this one. If they're going to be on the territory of the Red and Whites, the Red and Whites will be taking care of their own damn shit. We would be hearing a body count if there was any massive things going on, but there was nothing. Nothing. So I never quite understood why people had put their faith and trust in news stories, modified and chopped up in the fish bait, and then gave it out to people saying, "Oh, this is the real stuff over here," when it was just imitated, chopped up stuff, and they bought it. So now we got the independents out there. We got the smaller guys, not bringing up the millions of viewers, but just their own little empires. talking about the hoax. They're talking about the hoax. Even I thought it was a hoax, so I didn't pay attention all that much. I heard about it, tried to keep track on some of it. I'm like, okay, fine. I know the politicians are going to be going back and forth about the border regions. They're going to be pointing fingers left and right. That damn thing's already been screwed up for decades. Nobody else had a solid lead, but when there was a solid bill going through, that was actually going to be something a little more stringent and strict on the border. Politics, attitude, ego, whatever the hell it was, yanked the damn thing out. So now we're stuck with what we've got. And the people are still pointing fingers at each other because they think it's politically expedient. Have a nice day on that shit. I'm more worried about the coastline of California, my own state, going under. But the thing is, this is normal geology. I mean, I talked about geology a little bit. Said before, I'm not an expert in a lot of things. I don't have academia credits. I don't have it. Try to work on one lower rung, and that's enough for me. I still got to get through women in history, and that's bad enough. I'm dealing with Salem witch trial stuff. Oh yeah, I'm dealing with the Puritans from long ago England who want a little bit more devout service to God than everything else they've been dealing with concerning about Anglican, created by the King of England during that time, and not to mention Catholicism. We're talking about 14 or 1500s during this time. We're not talking about right now. But you might think about it right now because of the attitude happening these days. So the Puritans came across, established their own colony on Massachusetts, and with their own male-dominated egotistical megalomanias going on, trying to show people and demonstrate how pure they are in front of God, and have to continue this purity and be royal assholes to people. Women are subjective. They're supposed to be equal under God, but unfortunately, the men's rule and ego ruling. So yes, there are people in history are being suffered through this thing. And throughout the ages, men have still dominated politics like crazy. But when women start getting into politics, forget it. I had to be a male ego-dominated megalomania here. So no wonder I kept saying so many differences and similarities. I see the similarities happening back then in the control and the mindset and what they want for behaviors in comparison to what today's lunatics are. Almost the same, except for that dress style. But it's the same thing. We want to be your control rod over here. You will obey us because we say so. It's always been that way. So it's an essay I still got to write up. I got to get more material for it that I'm getting from online class, and then I got to write up some kind of a 500 word essay, like a 2 or 3 page word salad. Throw it on there with cited materials, make it look pretty, make it look like an essay should, and get that information out there. To me, that's the more priority at this point. But instead, I gotta freak out about every other independent or corporate media out there because they're having conniption fits over everything else. No, the other one's capturing my attention. And I talked about it a little bit, or more at great length, is my own coastline of California. For decades, we promoted and pronounced our California coastline as the most magnificent beaches out there. And then we have a conniption fits because geology's at work and destroying our illusions left and right. Not to mention people living on top of that illusions and panicking left and right, especially when their homes are getting destroyed left and right. There are certain sections of Rancho Palos Verdes that are getting nailed left and right. They are getting soil creep. They're getting land movements, power lines disrupted, a little bit of fire here and there, if there was any. So we had the utility companies pulling out. They're pulling out on on the peninsula. They're trying to restore some services, but not all of it. Some of the services are buried underneath, and if they break, that would be very bad. You got major gas lines underneath the damn peninsula, extending out in different directions. And they have to keep shutting up different areas of it to make sure that the gas is not flowing into affected geological disaster zones. Disaster zones meaning the ground sliding and taking buildings with it, cracking foundations, cracking buildings themselves, making slides left and right. I estimated about a month. Maybe they got a little bit longer, hopefully. But eventually, that peninsula is going to go over the top, is going to go right into the ocean. Eventually. I'm just not sure whose time zone it's going to be hitting into. But it's still terrifying because people who have, what I'm hearing stories off the locals on this one, that outlaw rich, they either retired or they're still working their asses off for their homes. They've had them for decades. They want it kept. They want it kept. But the problem is, geology says no. And as I was trying to explain, you get enough water in the water table at this point, we got a slip and slide situation. They're trying to find ways of how to alleviate that. They want to drain the water out of the table, basically. So we stop the sliding. You stop it on the top portion of it, but the bottom portion is still moving. And that's still going to be moving. It's going to be transferring that energy to the top portion, and we're still going to have the breakage. Now, how are they going to be dealing with that one? The geologists and the engineers are scratching their heads. They're still trying to come up with ways. But meanwhile, people are trying to cope by getting these expensive generators filled up all the time, every day, to power their needs. So instead of peace and quiet of the ocean to lull them to sleep, no, it's the constant hum of generators now. Because utilities companies have already pulled out in certain areas, but maybe a couple they're trying to get lines energized. It'll take about a week or two. Maybe they're trying to get the lines themselves, the tall poles with the lines going through them. They're trying to get them more established so they're not in the slide areas, and then power can be distributed once more. For some of the people in the peninsula, cool. But for the rest of the peninsula or being affected by it, on it. So how's that grab you? See, I don't have to worry about anybody else's YouTubes out there that are having conniption fits over things. They have their own little worlds. I'm dealing with my own little universe right now as it is. And they can say whatever the hell they want. But that landslide out there scares the hell out of me. And I've said so before. Geology scares the hell out of me. It's fascinating as hell. I'm learning a lot more about it. That my Earth is out to kill me. And everybody else in the process. Without even realizing it. But if it does, it's not doing a very good job eliminating the human race. Damn. We're screwed on that one, aren't we? I could try making a joke about the damn thing, but having a slide coming down your ass. Oh, no, no, no. It's like having the ground slide underneath you and you don't know how to deal with it. It's like dealing with earthquakes. I compared earthquakes to other natural disasters, and I kept telling people, this is the sneakiest bastard out there because it'll slip and slide everything else out. It'll shake you up. It'll bury you alive. It'll suck you into sinkholes. And this is the fun part about geology. I've had a professor teaching geology in class when I got into Antelope Valley College. Smart as a whip. These kids are like in the class. And they're trying to absorb all the classroom stuff and have lab for geology, which means they deal with chemicals and acids, and I'm not cool with that. That's why I was never comfortable taking the classes in the first place. But the lecture I could deal with. I could deal with the book knowledge. But actual chemicals, I'm not too keen on the chemicals. That's why I don't do it. But anyway, there was a section in there that dealt with earthquakes. Now she had um, created her thesis concerning about earthquakes out in Chile, I think, and she spent some time out in the field, especially when you have shifting of land masses out there, when you have fault lines cracking and crumbling and shifting around. Yeah, it does produce energy waves, and those energy waves on top and below vibrate the ground to where you're feeling what they call the quakes. It's the massive vibrations. Scare the hell out of people. Or unless you're really in tune with it, you're fascinated by it. If you're really in tune, you're like, yay, let's have a quake. Not for me, because I've already been surviving enough quakes as it is that those kind of vibrations, those kind of waves that go through, they do damage and they kill. Given enough sufficient energy and screwed up architecture and engineering, yeah, older stuff gets crumbled down and people die from it. Newer, well, be fine to a point. So while I was talking with my professor in class a long time ago, she was discussing earthquakes. This is nearly at the end of the semester. Kids never heard about they heard about the earthquakes, but they never felt them. And during that time, we actually had a slow uh, period when it came down for geology. Certain periods would come up with just slow activity, building up energy in different places, and then something would happen. Always does. And I'm hearing this lectures. I was hearing what was happening. I'm thinking, oh, I got to talk to these kids. I'm a survivor. I'm an old fart. I mean, when I came in there, it's like, is this assistant professor or something like that? Because I was facial beard and cane. I said, no, I like geology. I want to understand more because I got through shit in geology. I told him. In an earthquake, I said, yeah, I've been through a few myself. Perked up the professor because classes she's taught, hardly anybody was going through earthquakes. Oh, really? 71 still more. I started rattling off the other ones I survived through, including the 94 earthquake in Northridge. She's like, well, I wasn't there for Northridge. Yeah, you didn't miss much. Place was disastrous on city out here. 71, I was a young kid in an apartment complex in North Hollywood, California, in the top level, and we're feeling the earthquake, and we're also feeling how water displacement can ruin a perfectly good apartment down below, including a manager's place, especially when the swimming pool water just rushed right in there early in the morning in 1971. And hearing these stories coming up about how much damage they were afraid and also damage occurred. It only took me decades to look at the news footages and pictures to realize and understand what was going on. Back in 71, I was just only a toddler. I was just a kid, terrified of stuff. It's not back until, what was it, 82, 83, when we had to start more minor quakes happening throughout the Southland that got my attention. 87 quake, Whittier Narrows kicked in. Yeah, that caught my attention. I'm looking at power poles and I'm hoping these things stay together. Whittier Narrows was close, but the energy level wasn't that strong enough to really do any damage in San Fernando Valley where I was living in. It's not until give me several years later, when '94 kicked in, then we're talking damage. We're talking fear level left and right. I had already taken a previous college courses of geology to understand field geology and what laboratory would have been like, or just lecturing. And I wanted to see firsthand what geology was all about. And I got to see it. But I really got to feel the geology, especially when the quakes kicked in. And I was trying to explain this to the students in my geology class about this. They're like, and the professor's like, well, I've been through it and I've Went to Chile and did my thesis on this thing. And you know how much it's scary. You can't predict the things, at least during those days, because we didn't have the technology. And these kids don't know what an earthquake is unless it jumped up and bit them in the butt, and it will. It's not the funnest thing to go through. Some of the people think it was the funnest thing. I kept telling them, no, it isn't. Because when earthquakes happen, smaller ones either lead up to the larger ones or are just reminders that major ones come and then all hell breaks loose. That's why they kept talking to people left and right about the San Andreas. And there was a reason to this day, to this period of time, that we worry about the San Andreas fault line. See, for decades, we've had geologists going up and down the coastline and also in looking at certain areas and trying to get geologic movements recorded so they can understand and look at the patterns of what they're seeing. All these seismographs would have the paper charts, and they would look at them and analyze them, scrutinize them. They'll look at the pictures, go out in the field and scrutinize them like crazy, trying to see by looking at layers of rock how much they've been shifted, how long it's been shifting. They would do radiological tests, they would do chemical tests, visual tests, whatever they got to get their information. But it's gotten to the point that if we actually have a major, or at least 5.5 or something like that happening, we got in our current technology apps to scream out loud maybe a second or two if we're lucky. If we're close to the damn thing, almost known. But if we are a little further away, the apps monitor it instantaneously, sending the warning out saying, hey guys, duck. That's basically it. And you duck for cover. Well, we actually had the shaking out in Ridgecrest a few years back for July 4th. I was sitting here, and we had the ground shaking and vibrating. We had it rolling. And I'm hearing the things just rolling around here, rattling a bit. And my dog is going crazy at that point. She didn't know what was going on, so I had to hold her. And I figured the place was going to be crushing us. It was going to be crushing us. It didn't. But it felt like there was enough energy going through it. It could have. And people are outside and hooting and hollering and having a stiffy fit over the damn thing. Did I have anybody knocking the door to the station? Yep. Yep. Well, I open up the windows and I'm seeing people freaking out left and right. And we didn't have the power outages. But up in Ridgecrest, they had the power outages because power was knocked out, grounds were cracked like crazy, and building foundations were damaged. I think that they didn't have any injuries or deaths at the time. I think. I had to research. But that was scary back in those days. So I'm well aware of how much earth damage can do. I've heard stories coming, some, but not often enough in California, that there is certain soil out there that will be absorbed by the liquid, and if it's in a pocket in the stratal layers that we got for the rocks, the bedrocks that we have, if there's any isolated deposits in there of dissolvable minerals by water, they'll create a space, and sometimes that space will be underneath the surface, where we have things going in it. East Coast, not just the East Coast, but up and down east, and other areas that actually have dissolvable minerals like limestone and calcium. That stuff, I'm expecting more and more caverns to happen. I refer people over to Carlsbad Caverns in New Mexico. You want to see minerals dissolved and build itself up? Stalactites, stalagmites, and columns? We see these kind of caverns going on. You see geology at work. Some people think, wow, cool. But also keep this in mind that Earth movement is on a constant basis on this planet. We got no control. We can only adapt to it as much as we can. Doesn't matter what the governments will say or do. That's human invention. They can't control geology as much. So it does scare the hell out of me. And looking at Rancho Palos Verdes scares the hell out of me. Because I'm seeing a massive potential slide going to happen. The views are spectacular looking at the ocean, and you're smelling the ocean air, yeah, but you're not quite aware that the ground that you've got right now is dissolving underneath you. And then eventually, one of these here days, you're going to be like, ah, splat. We haven't had that yet. But people have caught images of where the land had moved. I just haven't heard any slides out here in the Southland of California that we haven't had that yet. Too much internal politics, too much internal battles happening right now. People pointing fingers left and right, trying to show that they are, who they are with personalities and egos and everything else going on right now. To me, that's superfluous. I mean, they can all scream and yell their heads off. I'm just waiting for Mother Nature to pull the rug out underneath them. If they're on top of a hillside and they're screaming and yelling what about their wild crap is, and everyone else is being pissy about it, and they're building up their own damn street grids, I was expecting the ground to just to slip, slide, and weigh. Remember those? I said about this one a few times. Slip and slide toys, plastic sheeting with holes poked in it with a water hook up into it. Water's spouting off all over the damn place, watering your lawn. And you got this perfectly good plastic tarp that people slide on the damn thing and hopefully don't get injured in the thing. My joints ache every time I keep talking about the damn thing because I remember it, including the pains. Not fun. And I was a kid during the time, too. So I kept looking at the slides as a slip and slide situation. Add too much moisture to the thing. You're not going to have tension. You're not going to have traction. You're not going to have anything to have the rock settle with enough moisture added to the bedrock layers. Oof. Yeah. We've had rains. We've had a lot of rains, and we've also had droughts where we didn't have that much rains. So yeah, things got unsettled with our geology. Or maybe it was normal for geology. I don't know. But hearing that much moisture that we actually had into the bedrocks. How many gallons of water do we actually had floating around in that place? Just to keep the rock layers cemented to a point, but then add too much liquid to it. Oh, I'm sorry. So, let them talk about all the stuff they think they want to do. Let them gripe and grumble about it. There was one thing I came across a couple of days. Somebody was predicting that we were supposed to be having an asteroid knock on our doorstep. Somebody actually posted a meme out there on Facebook. I hope it's gone. That we were supposed to have an impact of an asteroid here. That was supposed to happen last night. Let's look at the roaches. Didn't affect these bastards. No, because if we have a rogue asteroid hitting our ass, and if they had been tracking this bastard, then we would actually go either nuts or people would keep it silent, so the rest of the massive public wouldn't have a conniption fit over it. But guess what? Nothing happened. Nothing happened. If we did have an impact of an asteroid, the force of that nature hitting into the mantle itself, cracking the surface is one thing, but hitting the mantle and forcing the pressure waves throughout the rock, throughout the liquid mantle, not to mention through the Earth's core, yeah, it would tell the Earth, guess what? I just got hit majorly here. So we would feel it. We would feel it. We've got artist impressions concerning about how a meteor impact would affect us a great deal. Small asteroids or small meteors hitting into the Earth's surface. We can see some of the damages happening. I mean, we've got pockmarks that are still being weathered away, washed away, windblown. Some of them non-existent. Others are drowned, or others are just waiting for the wind to cover them up. Somewhere out in Arizona, there was a crater called Sunset Crater. Yeah, I'm sorry, Meteor Crater. Deep impression. Be tours in that area. That thousands, roughly, years ago, we actually had a meteor impact in Arizona, and it scared the hell out of people looking at this damn hole. Deep impression. We've had meteors streak by once in a while in our skies. We've had meteor showers, little tiny particles that would burn up in the atmosphere, but leave a nice little trail for about a second or two if you're lucky enough to catch it on film, or even catch it with your eyes. I've seen those things. But a large meteor streak going through the sky, I haven't seen that one. But only in news and only in video clips. So they're interesting. The ones that are really having an interest, and they're trying to get their equipment up in space, and not to mention the tracking stations we have out here all around the world. We're trying to protect ourselves from a large one coming through. That'll be, well, let's just say it'll make the one that caused the extinction of the dinosaurs look like it was streaks in the sky. We got one the size of the city, roughly. Let's say Los Angeles. One that covers the entire city of Los Angeles. I'm not talking about just a 1 mile. I'm talking about a 5 or 10 mile wide son of a bitch. That's an extinction. Why? Well, material being thrown up into the atmosphere and floating around there for years on end, reflecting the sunlight. Instead of we being warmed up, it'll be instant chill. That's what the assumptions were. Every time they kept doing geologic surveys, radiological measurements, trying to determine the decay of isotopes in the minerals, to make rough timeline assertions of when things have happened. And the things that they kept looking at was how long ago did we actually have an ice age that killed off dinosaurs, kept the Earth for an ice age for a long while, and then afterwards it started gradually warming up when the dust finally settled out of the atmosphere and onto the ground. But there was also recordings, I think back 300 or 400 years ago, when we actually did have an ice age of sorts for about a year. When we actually did have, at least this time, we had volcanism going on. And I'm talking about the Earth mantle spewing off its own rocks and gases out there, putting enough gas in the atmosphere to cool off the planet for about a year. You're talking about starvation issues during those days. So yeah, science is scary, science is fun, science is terrifying at the same time. We got to learn more about it. See, this is the things I like to talk about because they're in the areas I have a gist of. I don't care about a guy with a prison tattoo. I don't care if what he's saying these days. He's doing his own spiel. I'm fine with that. He doesn't like cops. He doesn't like laws, rules, or regulations, but he's already been through it anyway, so. And he says he's not political. He's political. Every time somebody says they're not political, they're political. You're going to be asking me? Well, I'm political. And I'm not spewing up which particular candidate I like anyway. Long ass video I'm doing right now anyway. I usually like to do shorter videos, maybe about 25, 30. This is a long rant. So this gentleman I had out there, I associate every once in a while with. I'm wondering what the hell is going on with him. And he's checking things out, and he's freaking out about one particular guy he thinks is turning to the dark side of the force because of the politics. I said, dude, he's already been screwed up right now as it is. He doesn't need your help or exposure. He's got his exposure out there anyway. Nobody's turning over here, and I'm afraid he's going to be turning in this way. And I'm looking at this friend of mine across the ways, and I'm thinking to myself, what kind of message can I get across to this guy? And just saying, like, chill it out already, will you? Shit. Fuck me. My language is not clean for anybody. Yeah, rat's ass, my channel anyway. I don't do the monetarization like people would. That's why they get the commercials on it. I don't, because I don't play on those things. I mean, yeah, granted, I try to keep my language clean for other people. But when I'm talking about things happening to me and things happening right now, yeah, I don't hold back on it. I generally don't. But I'm also trying not to put things down people's throats saying, you gotta listen, you gotta do this, you gotta. I'm telling you, I'm telling you, I'm telling you. No, I'm just telling my story. I'm telling my observations. I'm telling what I know and what I'm reading and I'm observing at this point. Because some things are happening right now and it's scary as hell. I caught one particular news story, and I knew these guys weren't going to be, the people in Rancho Palos Verdes weren't going to get the help necessary. I'll do that in another video when I